You know, when we dig into history, even fictional history, like the 41st millennium, we're usually obsessed with the disasters, right?
The big turning point.
The burning of libraries, the betrayals, all of that. And in Warhammer 40K, the defining disaster has to be the scattering. It's like the original sin of the entire setting.
Absolutely.
But today, I want to try something different. I want you to imagine a timeline where that disaster, but where it just never happens.
It's the ultimate what if, isn't it? We spend so much time in the lore dealing with the fallout of the Emperor's failure, the Broken Suns, the Heresy, the Long War.
Right.
We almost never stop and ask what success would have actually looked like.
That is exactly what we are unpacking today. We found this really fascinating breakdown from the channel Warhammer F's called What If the Primarchs Were Never Scattered?
Right.
And I'll admit, I went into this thinking, great, finally a happy ending for 40K, you know, a timeline where the good guys just win.
Yeah, where everything goes according to plan.
But the deeper I got, the more I realized that happy is definitely not the right word.
Orderly, maybe, or terrifyingly efficient is probably closer to the mark.
Terrifying is right. So the mission for this deep dive is to explore this alternate reality where the Emperor's grand design stays intact. We're going to look at how keeping the Primarchs on Terra changes not just the war, but their psychology and, I guess, the very soul of humanity.
And we're going to find out that perfection has a price.
A price I'm not sure anyone would want to pay.
It really brings up that old question, doesn't it? If you remove the struggle, do you also remove what makes us human? But to get there, we have to start at the beginning, in the gene vaults.
Right. Deep under the Himalayas, the source sets the scene so well. You've got the Emperor standing there before 20 gestation capsules, his sons.
His generals, his masterpieces.
And next to him is Malkador the Sigillite.
And for anyone who might be newer to the really deep lore, Malkador isn't just some advisor. He's the Emperor's shadow. Probably the only other person who truly gets the scale of the plan.
And in the source, they have this really heavy exchange right before things usually go wrong.
Yeah.
Malkador looks at these sleeping demigods and he just asks, and if destiny resists your design?
And the Emperor's reply is just so cold. He says, then destiny will be rewritten.
It gives me goosebumps every time because in the timeline we know, in canon, destiny pushes back hard.
The Chaos Gods reach into the lab, the alarms go off, the Geller fields shatter.
And the pods are just sucked into the void, gone.
And that's the moment 40K as we know it is born. The infants are scattered across 20 different awful worlds. They grow up alone, surrounded by monsters, slavers. That trauma is what defines them.
The source calls it the single act that created heroes, monsters, and the wars that followed.
Which is such a good way to put it.
It really is. Without that, you don't get Leman Russ raised by wolf. You don't get Mortarion breathing poison on Barbarous.
Exactly. But in this alternate reality, the alarms sound. And the Emperor is ready. He detects the breach just that little bit earlier. He slams his psychic will down.
And the shields hold. The pods don't vanish.
The Chaos Gods are burned away. The babies stay home.
Crisis averted. And, you know, my first thought was, okay, great. Logistics solved. No big search party needed. But the source argues it's not a logistical change.
No, it's a total rewrite of nurture.
It's the ultimate nature versus nurture experiment, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, think about what a Primarch is. Genetically, they're demigods, sure. But in canon, they're shaped by their homeworlds. By abuse, by culture, by having to conquer a planet just to survive.
And in this timeline,
all 20 of them grow up inside the Imperial Palace on Terra.
So instead of being the Wolf King or the Night Haunter, they're just the Emperor's sons, raised in a lab.
Raised in labs and lecture halls and training cages. The source really emphasizes this. They're trained together, commanded together. They're shaped by a single vision.
That phrase, single vision, kind of stopped me because it sounds great on paper. Teamwork. No fighting, but...
But it changes them fundamentally. The source makes a key point here. From this moment forward, individuality changes. In canon, they meet as rivals, as fully formed warlords with their own egos.
Here they grow up as actual brothers.
Yeah, not just strangers who happen to share some DNA and meet up 200 years later.
Right.
Competition is still there, of course, they're Primarchs. But loyalty comes first. They're moderated by proximity. If you have a temper tantrum, your brother is right there to call you out.
And your dad is there to correct you immediately.
Let's get specific because the butterfly effect on some of these characters is just massive. The source points out a few, and the biggest one for me has to be Angron.
Oh, Angron, the tragedy of 40K.
In our timeline, he lands on Nuceria, gets enslaved, forced into gladiator pits, and the slavers hammer these things called the butcher's nails into his skull.
And for anyone listening who hasn't read the Angron books, the nails are not just jewelry.
No, they're psychosurgical implants. They literally replace parts of his brain. They punish him with agony if he isn't angry, and reward him with a dopamine hit when he kills.
They turned an empath into a monster.
They lobotomized him. But in this timeline,
None of it happens. He never leaves Terra.
never sees a gladiator pit. The source says he never suffers the rage that defined his life.
Just imagine that, a calm Angron, a tactical genius who can actually feel something other than pure rage.
It's more than just removing a threat. Angron was designed to be an empath. Without the nails, he's probably the emotional core of the Brotherhood, the peacemaker.
Wow. Okay, what about someone more complex, like Lorgar?
Lorgar Aurelian. In canon, he's the religious fanatic, lands on Colchis, a world steeped in faith. He grows up needing a god to worship.
And when he finds the Emperor, he starts worshiping him, which the Emperor, a militant atheist, absolutely hates.
Right, so the Emperor burns his favorite city to the ground to teach him a lesson. And that shame is what drives Lorgar right into the arms of the Chaos Gods.
But if he stays on Terra,
He never develops that forbidden religious obsession. His father is right there, every day, explaining the science of the universe. He understands the imperial truth because he was raised in it.
so he becomes the ultimate scholar instead of the ultimate heretic.
And then there's Horus, the War Master.
The favorite son, the guy who burns the galaxy down.
In canon, Horus fell because of pressure, isolation. He felt the Emperor abandoned them. But here, he never feels that isolation. He understands the big plan because he was in the room when it was drafted.
It sounds sterile. I mean, it sounds perfect, but maybe too perfect. You have 20 demigods who all get along, no daddy issues, all reading from the same script.
And that's where the source points out a huge flaw, a key dependency.
I saw that. It's that they never learn how to exist without the Emperor.
Exactly. Think about it. In canon, for good or ill, the Primarchs learned to survive on their own. Guilliman built an empire. The Lions survived a death world alone. They were kings before they were generals.
They had their own identities.
In this timeline, they're just extensions of his will. High-functioning instruments. They've never had to define themselves outside of their father's shadow.
Which is fine, I suppose, as long as Dad's around.
As long as the conductor is there, the orchestra plays perfectly. But we'll get to why that's a problem. For now, let's look at what this perfect obedience does to the Great Crusade.
The Crusade. The big galactic road trip. In our lore, it was 200 years, it was messy, full of setbacks. How does Team Terra do it?
Operational efficiency.
Yeah.
That's the headline. The source describes it as launching with unmatched coordination.
Well, for one thing, you're not wasting decades looking for lost kids.
That's a huge piece of it. In canon, the whole war machine would pause so the Emperor could go have a heart-to-heart with the lost son. It was a logistical nightmare.
Here they just deploy immediately. No need to convince Angron to join or calm down the Khan.
And because of that, the strategic unity is overwhelming. The source contrasts the desperate warfare of canon with this timeline's surgical precision.
No more Lion arguing with Russ over who gets the glory.
None of that. Everyone knows their role, so world after world just falls into compliance. It's the difference between a bar brawl and a controlled demolition.
Which brings us to the biggest change of all. The Horus Heresy. The civil war that ruins everything. In this timeline.
It just doesn't happen.
It's gone.
And it's really important to understand why. It's not because chaos just gives up.
Right. They're still out there.
They still want to destroy the Emperor, but, and the source puts this perfectly, chaos cannot find a fracture large enough to widen.
The heresy needed resentment. It needed Angron's pain, Lorgar's shame, Horus's pride.
And without those cracks, there's no leverage. You can't tempt Lorgar with forbidden knowledge if he's happy with the knowledge he has.
So chaos is basically locked out, knocking on the door, but no one's home.
And while they're locked out, the Emperor is winning the long game. The Webway Project.
Okay, explain the Webway for people who just think space elves. Why is it so important?
The Webway is a labyrinth between dimensions. It allows for instant travel without going into the warp. And the warp is where chaos lives. It's a psychic hellscape.
So if humanity can use the Webway, we start taking drives through Demon Town.
Exactly. In canon, the project fails because Magnus the Red breaks it by accident. But here, Magnus is trained on Terra. He knows the rules. He doesn't make that mistake.
And the Emperor finishes the project. Humanity stops needing the warp.
And that is the death knell for chaos. The source explains it as a metaphysical consequence. Humanity's dependence on the work just fades away.
So, total victory. The crusade works, the heresy is canceled, chaos is starved. We should be popping champagne.
You think so?
But I noticed the tone of the source shifts right about here. It gets darker.
It does. And this is where we have to look at the title again. The Age of Perfect Obedience.
A source has that line, perfection is rarely merciful. Why isn't this a happy ending?
It's about what was lost. We talked about nature versus nurture. Well, by removing the diverse homeworlds and struggles, you also remove the diversity of human experience from the leadership.
The source calls it cultural stagnation.
Think about the canon Imperium. It's a mess, but it's vibrant. You have the Roman feel of Ultramar, the Viking sagas of Fenris, the stoicism of Nocturne. The Primarchs brought those cultures with them.
But in this timeline, they're all just
Terra. They're extensions of a single ideology, the Romano culture.
So you get less rebellion, which sounds good for stability.
But you also get less debate, less innovation. The source calls it a frighteningly stable Imperium.
Frighteningly stable? How is stability frightening?
Evolution needs variation. It needs challenges. In this timeline, worlds that resist aren't negotiated with. They're replaced. Yeah, that word stuck with me. It's not conquering, it's overwriting.
Exactly. The Imperium becomes a monolith. Cultures are reshaped to match imperial doctrine. You either fit the mold of Terra or you're removed.
It's not a union, it's a clone army of planets. Unified, but increasingly uniform. It's efficient, but it's soulless.
So let's jump forward. The source takes us 10,000 years into the future. Our 40K is grimdark, war, decay. What does it look like here?
The Emperor still lives. That's the huge thing. He's a living ruler, not a corpse on a throne. The Primarchs are still there. Humanity dominates.
But the galaxy is quieter.
Quieter, not because there's no suffering, but because, as the source says, individuality has diminished.
That is just a haunting phrase. It's like the whole galaxy has been sedated.
It's the piece of a zoo, a very safe, very well-run zoo. And chaos is still out there watching, waiting for this perfect empire to rot from the inside.
Rot from within? I thought it was perfectly stable.
Well, even unity, when it's absolute, becomes fragile. If everyone thinks the same way, you lose the ability to adapt. If a new threat shows up that the Emperor didn't plan for, who's going to have the crazy, out-of-the-box idea to stop it?
Not the Primarchs. They just follow the plan.
Exactly. So history calls this the Age of Perfect Obedience, not the Age of Heroes.
I think the source is making a really powerful critique here. We always assume the Emperor's plan was perfect and the heresy ruined it. But this suggests his perfect plan was kind of a nightmare.
It suggests absolute unity can be as dangerous as total war. You've saved the species, sure, but have you killed what made it worth saving?
And there's one last massive catch, the final fragility. This whole golden age depends on one single thing.
The Emperor must stay alive.
Right, because the sons never learned to be kings.
They never learn to rule alone. They are perfect lieutenants, but they are not sovereigns. In canon, Guilliman can run an empire. The Lion can lead a crusade. They learned that independence through hardship.
But here, they're just limbs of the Emperor.
So the source poses this terrifying question. What if the Emperor had died, truly died, at the height of the crusade? The Imperium wouldn't just decline.
It says it would have shattered overnight.
Because the central processor would be gone. The sons wouldn't know how to function. They'd be paralyzed. They have no political instincts, only military ones.
So, in a weird way, the flaw of the scattering, the fact that they all grew up the hard way, is the only reason the Imperium survived in our timeline.
The trauma made them resilient. The perfection made them fragile. It turns the whole setting on its head. The tragedy we all mourn might actually be the thing that kept humanity alive.
Man, that's a lot to process. It completely flips the script on what a good outcome in 40K even is. We want to fix it, but maybe the brokenness is the point.
It forces you to ask what you really value. Is it safety and order above all else? Or is it the chaotic, messy potential of individuality?
The source wraps it up by saying that humanity did not fracture. It aligned. Completely, and that alignment is terrifying.
It's the silence of the graveyard versus the noise of a battlefield. One is peaceful, sure, but nothing grows there.
So, to sum up, we have an Imperium that's efficient, dominant, chaos-free. The Webway is working, but the cost is a galaxy where every human is just a slightly different shade of gray.
A galaxy where destiny was rewritten, just as the Emperor promised. But the new story has no heroes, because heroes need adversity. It only has obedient servants.
It's such a powerful what if. It makes you look at the canon timeline with all its horror and misery and think, maybe that was the only way humanity could survive being human.
A grim thought for a grim, dark universe.
Absolutely. And it raises a really provocative final question for you listening, one that kind of hangs over this whole thing. In a galaxy of perfect safety, where individuality has been erased to ensure survival, have we actually saved humanity, or have we just hollowed it out?
At what point does the cost of survival just become too high?
Something to chew on. Thanks for diving deep with us into what might have been.
Always a pleasure.
We'll catch you on the next one. Stay curious.